says Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivaraja Kacharya Bharya Sarva Shastra Siddhanta Vit Astotra Satya Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj. That's pretty significant. Sarva Shastra Siddhanta Vit. That means he knows all the Shastra. Some of the Shastra, it's not as important as some others. Why not? Because there's different Shastras for different things. For example, there's the Dhanur Veda. The Dhanur Veda teaches you the use of the bow and the arrow, which is very important, but maybe not for everyone. So we're interested in Paramahansa Dharma, and that will become clear as we go through the reading this morning. So I'm starting off, I think, on page 11. And I said before, it's very difficult for me to make progress through this because what Srila Sridhar Maharaj is saying is very dense. He's giving a profound theological argument to support the teachings of not only Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and the Gaudiya Math, but Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, the different Goswamis in the line, Kaviraj Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and their particular vision of the Bhagavat theology. And their point of view is that the Bhagavat theology is the highest, that there cannot be any higher theology. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj is defending this idea against all comers. He's defending that against the atheists, against the scientists, against modern so-called Christianity, against even those who propose Vedic Dharma. There is an important distinction between Vedic Dharma and Vaishnava Dharma, and we'll look at that this morning. So, Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, first, we must eliminate this mortal existence. Let's see if I can read from the book on the screen. Well, can't find it right away. Stay with me for a moment. Okay. I'll just read from the book here. It's easier. First, we must eliminate this mortal existence. Then we must satisfy our reason, our consciousness. And finally, we must satisfy our heart. So what he's saying here, it translates quite well back into Sanskrit and back into the ancient traditions. When he speaks of the mortal existence, he's talking about Maya. And then he says, we must satisfy our reason, our consciousness. He's talking about chit, sat and chit. And then finally, we must satisfy our hearts. So sat, chit, and ananda. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the heart is the most important thing within us. We should follow the direction of the heart. The highest fulfillment is fulfillment of the heart, not the fulfillment of consciousness or the attainment of eternal existence. So this is a particular point in the Bhagavat version that eternal existence is nice. It's okay, but it's kind of boring. There's nothing going on. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, when he published Prapana Jivanamritam, he says Amritam, the real concept of Amritam, should be positive and progressive immortality. Immortality is doing something. The word immortal, it's curious because It's really just a negation of the idea of death. But positive and progressive immortality, this is important. So he says, first, we must satisfy our reason, our consciousness. And finally, we must satisfy our heart. The highest fulfillment is fulfillment of the heart, not the fulfillment of consciousness or the attainment of eternal existence. This is why we're not Shivites. This is why we're not Christians. The Christians want immortality, but we want immortality with Ananda, the fulfillment of consciousness. Srila Sridhar Maharaj has said in other places that Ananda, or ecstasy, is the real food of the soul. Eternal existence has no meaning if it is not conscious. So, think about that. Let that, sink in for a moment. He says, eternal existence has no meaning if it is not conscious. So if you're a rock eternally or a particle of helium, it's really kind of meaningless. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't experience anything. Bishop Berkeley said that if there's no perception, there's no reality. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, then does it make a sound? Not really, in the sense that sound is a function of perception. Sound, audio is a function of the ear. If there's no ear, there's no audio. So a rock existing eternally without consciousness, it's meaningless. Consciousness, Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, has no meaning if it does not give any fulfillment. So these are interesting concepts. You could do a college course on either one of them. You could write a book called Eternal Existence Has No Meaning If It Is Not Conscious. Or you could also write a book on Consciousness Has No Meaning If It Does Not Give Any Fulfillment. So these are different schools of thought. One school of thought is nature is dead. And that school of thought's been prominent since a little bit after the Renaissance, as science came in with Francis Bacon. They began to think, well, what is nature? If I can dissect it and analyze it, it's not really living, is it? So nature is dead. Before that, in the Middle Ages and before the Middle Ages, everyone knew that nature is alive, nature is conscious, but science killed that. And then Nietzsche came along and killed God. So they determined that consciousness doesn't really exist. And that's a school of thought that's very prominent today. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj reacts against that and points out consciousness is real, but it doesn't really have a meaning if it doesn't give any fulfillment. This is our own particular line. So, Sat, eternal existence, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda, fulfillment, ecstasy, are the three principles of our ultimate destination. So let that sink in, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. These things are the real goal of human existence. And considering these as our goal, we should progress further and further in our spiritual life. In the Manu Samhita, it is stated, Vidvad bi sevita shadbir nityam advesha ragibi hridayan abhyajanto yodarmastam nibodhaha. It says we can feel within our heart whether we are gainers or losers. That tasting machine is within us. As we progress in Krishna consciousness, our karma, our connection with this material world, will evaporate in no time, and spacious knowledge will come to satisfy us. At that time, we shall feel the object of our life everywhere. When we can feel, when we can see that the fulfillment of life has embraced us, we shall see that everything within the environment is helping us, Everything is sympathetic to us from all sides. In that spiritual domain, everyone shall take interest in loving us. We may be careless about our own interest, but the environment there is more favorable and affectionate to us than we can even estimate, just as a child cannot estimate the extent of his mother's affection. In this way, friends and home comforts will surround us. And with this realization, we shall go back home, back to Godhead. So I looked at this verse that he quotes from the Manu Samhita, and I'm thinking, well, what is he trying to say here? And if we go back through what we've already discussed in our reading of this book, Srila Sridhar Maharaj begins with the idea, or the gradual process, if you like, of developing bhakti or divine love from the seed of faith. He says, Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Tabhajana Kriya Tato Narta Nivritti Syat. So now he's kind of bringing up the idea of ruchi. Tato Nishta Ruchi Tata. He says, in the beginning, there must be faith, Shraddha. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees, sadhu sangha. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes regulative principles under his orders. So that would be bhajana kriya. Gradually, one is freed from unwanted habits and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service. So anartha nivritti and nishta. Thereafter, one develops taste and attachment. This is the way of sadhana bhakti, the execution of devotional service according to the regulative principles. Gradually, emotions intensify, and finally, there's an awakening of love. So, Srila Sridhar Maharaj starts out here in this book, talking about faith, and then he brings up sadhu sangha and the importance of having a good association with the devotees, and bhajana kriya, following the rules and regulations, and entering into sadhana bhakti. And he warns about the different obstacles we might confront on the path. So, anartha nivritti, we were discussing this last week. It means to give up unwanted things, unnecessary and unwanted desires, attitudes, things, what is unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. We're given some guidance on this by Rupa Goswami. We pointed this out last week. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangas chaloyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashyati. And it's very easy to just glance over this and think, okay, well, I've taken care of that. But it's not as simple as it appears to be. Rupa Goswami says, one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. Atyahara. Atyahara, it means grabbing too much. Like hari, it means one who takes away. Atyahara means accumulation, eating more than necessary, collecting more than necessary. So these things may contaminate, they may corrupt. It may be that, as in the case of Bhaktivedanta Swami, he was able to found a great organization and have millions of dollars coming in and thousands of devotees. But we're not all on that level. That prayas, it means over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to attain. Excuse me. And I pointed this out before. Sometimes it's hard to understand what do we mean by bhakti. But you can consider bhakti as divine love, being a higher version or a pure version of mundane love. Maybe in this world, The highest form of mundane love is shown by a mother towards her child because she's willing to sacrifice absolutely anything. Uh, but love, in a general sense, may also be analyzed, and we can think that what Rupa Goswami is telling us here is useful even in mundane love relationships. That if you're too much involved in profit and loss, and as Wordsworth said, the world is too much with us. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Getting and spending and getting and spending, working 24 hours a day to get more money to put into the savings account. And then you find out that, oh, here in Mexico, uh, it happened 20 years ago or so. And even before that, 30 years ago, every now and then, they have a major devaluation of the peso. So the Americans here in the community where I live, they would wake up and find out that they had $100,000 in the bank, and now it was 100,000 pesos, and that the pesos were only worth maybe 1/10 of what they had been. So working and working to collect and collect and get so that your savings are eventually wiped out and they're valueless. What is the point? This spoils love. It destroys love. Too much getting and spending. Adyahara, uh, grabbing, over endeavoring for mundane things. This is another sacrificing everything for a big project, and then finding out that the project is not really what you thought it was. There were devotees who would squabble over who gets to record the spiritual master, who gets to make the movie, who found out later, oh, there was no tape in the tape recorder. We were fighting over nothing. And meantime, we didn't listen to what he was saying. When I was in India, there were different devotees responsible for recording the Sri Rama so we could make the transcripts that led to the creation of these books. And I would listen very carefully and try to remember everything and grab the different points that he was making and try to remember the anecdotes so that if somebody asked me later, I could tell them, well, basically, Sridhar Maharaj is outlining the ideas about fate. And then the devotee responsible for recording, he was pushing people out of the way, making sure the microphone is properly placed. His headphones were on, the volume level was correct. But they would ask him later, what did Srila Sridhar Maharaj say? And he said, I don't know, it's on the tape. It's like today, young people in class, they won't listen to the teacher, but they'll take photographs of the blackboard that they'll forget about and erase later. So over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to attain. It's another way of destroying love. And then prajalpo, which is interesting. It's talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. Basically means gossip. Basically means the entire internet, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all that. It's probably 90%, 95% prajalpo and 80% generated by artificial intelligence anyways. But what I want to get to is this fourth principle here, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. So bookmark that, I'll come back to it. And then Rupa Goswami finishes, Jana Sangha, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. This is very difficult because people will ask you, oh, you're not Catholic. If you live in Ireland, are you Catholic or Protestant? Oh, you're not Catholic? Or Mexico. You're not Catholic? Well, then what are you? And if you try to explain calmly, people will either very generously say, oh, well, it's all the same, isn't it? your God, my God, it's the same God, right? We're all worshiping the same thing. So why not come to my church? Or if they're not generous, they'll condemn you as a pagan and think about reporting you. So jana sangha, sometimes difficult. You may make very good friends in the material world and then find out they're not amenable to your devotional point of view, jana sangha. So it may be difficult to give up that association, but one at least can be wary about allowing that kind of association to influence you. And finally, being greedy for mundane achievements. And the devotees will tell you, I've heard this, that it's all right, it's very fine and good to be greedy for Krishna. So we can go out and rob, cheat, steal, kill, sell drugs, um, and do whatever, as long as we're going to give the result to Krishna. But this this sort of this sort of logic is not really a very healthy way of seeing things as we have seen. And so the idea of niyamagraha, this is interesting. It means following the scriptures too carefully or not following them. So generally, we feel that the rules and regulations of Shastra are important and must be followed. So it's unwise to leave behind scriptural advice on behavior. But after all, what we're cultivating here is divine love. So we may sometimes even see a clash between the Vedic idea of rule-based dharma and the Vaishnava idea of heart-shaped dharma, because codes, even the best codes, can become idolatrous traps that tempt us to complicity. And Srila Sri Ramakrishna reminds us not to become totally invested in the code, even the best code of the Vedic scriptures, since after all, the real enlightenment, true knowledge, true divine love comes through the heart and not through the book and its code. So this seems very paradoxical. And I've always had problems with people who will say, "Well, I don't need any book. I don't use any book." Uh, but there's something there. It's embraced here in this shloka by what are called the Vidvadbhi and the Shabdi, the learned and the wise. And so in his consideration of Dharma here, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is quoting this verse from the Manu Samhita, second chapter, first verse. And he ties this to the first canto of the Bhagavatam, where it says, Savai Pamsam Paro Dharma. What is the supreme Dharma, the highest Dharma? So I took a little time to research this shloka from the Manu Samhita. Vidvadbhi sevita sadbir nityam advesha ragibi hridayan abhyanuj gato yo dharmas tam nibodhita. It says you should understand that real dharma, which is what we're trying to ferret out here. What is the nature of real dharma? True dharma, which is always followed by the learned and the good, or the wise and the righteous. The vidvadbhi, which means they know the Shastra, and the sadbhi, which the sadhu, who are always free from hatred and attachment, advesha ragibi. And this is approved by one's own heart. So the key word here is hridayan abhyanugyata, approved or sanctioned by the heart. So uh, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's using this verse to point out the nature of Shuddha Bhakti. And normally people will take this shloka in kind of a prosaic way to talk about Dharma. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave a lecture uh, at, at the Dhanbad library. And this is mentioned by Govinda Maharaj. Uh, so I got this from a Facebook page called Religion of the Heart. And Srila Govinda Maharaj, he explains that Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he revolutionizes the understanding of Manusmriti here at a historic address at the public library in Dhanbad, India, speaking before an elite gathering of wealthy aristocrats, logic scholars, and traditional smarta pundits. So the smartas and, Vedic pundits, they like the Manu Sanhita, something like the Sharia law of the Muslims, because it lays out Vedic Dharma. But Srila Srinivas uses this shloka to challenge institutionalized, text-bound religion. And so Govinda Maharaj explains like this. He says, when Krishna wants to reveal transcendental knowledge in your heart through his devotee, it must be revealed. Even you won't be able to check it. So we need connection with Krishna's devotees. Thus, the actual question is, how can we recognize a genuine devotee, a true religious person? To whom does Krishna reveal himself? The first verse to explain this, which explains the theme of our book, Religion of the Heart, must be Vidvad bi sevita sadbir nityam advesha ragibi hridayan ab byanu gyato yodarmastam nibodhitaha. And he says, Srila Guru Maharaj once gave a lecture in the library of Dhanbad before a gathering of many highly qualified pundits and wealthy persons. He started his lecture with this verse. He explained that people think religion is found in books, and those books are written in particular languages, but that religion does not actually come from books or languages. Religion is communicated through the transcendental language of heart transaction. All religion, this is Govinda Maharaj speaking, all religion presented in scriptures is first revealed in the hearts of rishis, munis, and sadhus. After it appears in their hearts, it is transmitted forward from heart to heart, and it may later take the form of books. So, what can we say about religion? How much can we understand it? It is a matter of the heart. How can we feel the beauty and understand the glory of religion if our hearts are presently as filthy as a dustbin? Because our hearts are impure, we must try to understand religion from a clean-hearted sadhu. So, his presentation, which became a cornerstone of the book Religion of the Heart, established the Gaudiya Vaishnava doctrine of descending revelation. So, this is also given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And later, to sort of connect this up with the Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavad Purana, we're given here in the first canto, second chapter, Savai Pung Sang Paro Dharma. So we're discussing Dharma. What is the nature of Dharma? Occupation, duty, religion. So Savai Pung Sang Paro Dharma, Chato Bhaktir Adhokshajet, Haitukia Prahita, Yayatma Suprasidite. The supreme occupation, the supreme Dharma for everyone is that by which we can attain loving devotional service to the transcendent Lord, Adhokshaja. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy self. So again, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we began talking about how does the soul get satisfaction? It's not enough just to exist. A rock a particle might exist eternally, but eternal existence is dry and empty without consciousness. And consciousness is unfulfilled without ecstasy. So real ecstasy will come through this sublime Dharma, Paro Dharma, supreme Dharma of dedication. And so this is the meaning of this verse that Srila Sridhar is quoting here. And he says, once you take up that path, you'll discover that everything is sympathetic to you from all sides. And in that spiritual domain, everyone will take interest in loving us. So there we will discover friends, comforts will surround us. And with this realization, we should go back to God, back to home. So I think that's all I'm prepared to. I'm looking for my clock. What's the time? That's only about half an hour, but so what do you think of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's idea about Dharma? Anybody? Drop my glass. He's quoting the Bhagavatam here. He says, Savai Pangsam Paro Dharma, Yato Bhaktir Hokshaje. So that's what Dharma is. He says the Vidvadbi and the Sadbi, they know this. Nityam Advesha Ragibi, they're free from raga. They don't have attachment or anger. So these are also interesting points that, we should aspire to become free from anger and attachment. And by freeing ourselves from anger and attachment, we may come to the level where these things will appear within our heart. But anyways, that's my talk for the morning. What sayest thou? Can you hear me? What do you think? This is Paro Dharma. You agree? If we agree, we should be trying to practice this and not involve this whole thing about anartha nivritti. It's very interesting. It's like a lifetime work, becoming free from anarthas. It's like you can make a list of things that you think, well, these are unfavorable. I should give that up. And then somehow they come back to haunt you. So how do we become free from anarthas? It's a long, difficult process, not so easy. The idea
I
is, well,
think,
yeah, help me.
can I make a comment?
Yeah,
I
please.
think I think we all need some mercy to get rid of our anarthas.
Yeah,
We need that. We are not capable of doing by our own. If we think we can do it by our own, we will fail once and always, because we have to be humble to recognize our faults. And as long as we don't consider them as faults that we need to correct, we cannot ask for the mercy to get rid of these things. I like very much the idea of religion that you mentioned, that it is something that is revealed to the devotee, and it is a supreme dharma because it is the illumination, or I don't know how to call it, of the devotee that goes through him, and then by the distribution of this, it became religion. That is very beautiful, Mahayogi. I think it is a concept that make us think how the conscience is always in expansion. It is not something that doesn't change. It is always revealing new aspects of the supreme reality, new points of views that sometimes the religion and the rules of the religions and the rules of the time cannot do, because it is subjected to material knowledge. Once you make a religion, that's why Krishna say, give up all religions, give up and only think about me and only serve me, because I am always going to renew your point of view. You are always going to find fresh
Yes,
insight.
this is exactly, this is what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, abandon sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam raja. He's saying, okay, you have all these different ideas and, rituals and societies and institutions and, you know, traditions, but that's not what it's about. It's about surrender. So discover surrender and don't worry about all these different temporal codes. You know, in India, really, I would say, although this talk is for a Western audience in English, but really, Sridhar Maharaj's discussion there at the Bodha Library is aimed at a certain sector of Vedic India, or people who believe that their Vedic concept is supreme. For example, today in India, there's Narendra Modi. So how do we deal with that? Uh, a lot of people will say, well, he's promoting Hindu nationalism, and that's bad. We don't like nationalism of any form. Uh, and that's true. On the other side, maybe he will be helpful to uh, people who promote Indian religion, like us, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We want more people to read Prabhupada's books. We want more people to read the Bhagavad Gita. We think that's a sublime thing. But strangely, in the middle of all this, uh, Hindu nationalism, by promoting Hindutva, may marginalize and even exclude the Western devotees as being somehow lesser, just as the Pandas in Jagannath Puri, they don't really like it if Western devotees try to enter the temple because we're somehow contaminated by our sanskaras. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj's conference there at the Bodha Library, he's pointing out that, all right, you have all these relative considerations of Dharma, even in the Vedas, even in the Manu Samhita. But even the Manu Samhita is telling you that the Vidvan and the sadhus, they're promoting the religion of the heart. They're promoting Krishna Bhakti. They're promoting Paro Dharma, which is Adhokshaja Bhakti, devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Adhokshaja. So, like I said, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is reminding us not to become totally invested in the code, even the best code of the Vedic scriptures, since after all, real enlightenment or real divine love comes through the heart. And so it's kind of paradoxical because here I am reading a book, but the idea is not to become too caught up in a sort of fetishized system of rules and regulations, promoted by an institution, because in the end, it's strange, but institutions seem to have a life of their own. Schools promote schooling. The medical institution, promotes the medical institution. Big pharma promotes big pharma. They're not necessarily interested in the health of the individual as in perpetuating the system. So the problem is well-meaning people who have a beautiful idea come together and think, well, how can we preserve this idea and create an institution? But sometimes the institution doesn't serve the idea, it serves the institution. And when that institution is as old as the Vedic Shastras, it's worthwhile to have a look and see, well, where are the sadhus? Where are the vidvan, the wise, who can help me and give me their mercy? Something like that. This is, I think, the idea being set forth here. So I looked at that shloka from Manu Sanghita, and you can see Sri Ramanuja is putting emphasis on hridaya in that shloka, which means the heart. That's the best adaptation of or explanation or elucidation I can give this morning. Anyone else? Pranasheech?
Yeah, you said an interesting thing just now about the organization. So let's have a look at, we have the institution. So when you're living in the institution, it's providing your shelter, your food, everything. So there's more emphasis on the actual institution, right? Now, if you ever get a chance to leave that environment and, let's say, go to a quieter place, let's say a mutt somewhere in India, in a quiet place, you start concentrating more on the message of the mutt rather than the actual mutt itself. Right? So we have the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat mutt, and then you have the teachings of the Sri Chaitanya, or let's say, what do they call it in corporate? The message, in corporate, there's you have the company and you have its what do you call it? Its motto, logo, message, whatever, right?
They like to talk about the mission,
The mission.
And the vision. Mission and the vision.
Oh, the mission and the vision. Here we go. Now you've got it spot on. So when you leave the mission a little bit, you concentrate more on the vision. Also, if you're in a quieter place to study the Shastras, you're introduced more to the books of the Parampara a little bit, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, for example, where you may not have had a chance in the temple place to look at. Okay, every day you're getting the Bhagavatam in the morning, the Bhagavad Gita in the evening, and if you're lucky, a bit of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and that's everything. There's nothing missing there, for sure. There's nothing missing. Everything is there. But in the mission, the quieter mission, you're introduced a little bit more to the works of the previous gurus, a little bit more, the great, wonderful Alwars of South India that you never hear about in a normal temple environment, but you do hear from the other professors and teachers in the place of learning, and so on and so forth, right? So I have 3,000 pages of transcribed text from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He mentions the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mutt 3 times. 3 times, 2 sentences. Okay? I'm just saying this is what I've noticed.
You're right. So, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, through his words and teachings, you can see his concentration is pretty much 85 90% ontology, theology. He's giving you the vision of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but he's not, even when the devotees will come to him and say, but the mission, Maharaj, what about the mission? It's like, well, he'll take it to a higher level and then become ontological. And that's why I love him. That's his nature,
Exactly. And also, it was a long time previous that he founded his mission, but he was obviously didn't really care much about the actual mission itself. He was more concerned about the message of the mission.
Well, I would not go so far as to say he didn't care.
He never mentions it. He never mentions the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math.
But I would say this.
One shloka that he wrote 40 years ago, and he never elucidated from that ever. Just the one little shloka which showed us everything, but that was it.
That may be, but I would add a caveat, and I would say that while he doesn't demonstrate this tendency to get involved in management of the Chaitanya Saraswat, for Srila Sridhar Maharaj, in a certain way of speaking, would have considered Srila Govinda Maharaj as the embodiment of the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat.
Exactly.
And he would be like, well, okay, give it to him. He'll do it,
Yeah. Okay.
What, the Sri Chaitanya, that's him. He is the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat. I'm just because he said, in the beginning, there were like 3 brahmacharis who they sort of began helping him out when he set himself up on the banks of the Ganges there. And then they told him, look, we want to make a mission over here. And, it will be incorporated and everything. And you'll be the head of it, but we will get the vote. And he said, well, wait a minute. There's 2 of you and there's 1 of me. How does that work? If you get the vote, you get to vote me out. So I'm not so sure. And then Govinda Maharaj came along and he said, well, he's going to be my successor. And that was established very early on. So I think Srila Sridhar Maharaj, when he thought about what's going to go on with the Mat, he wouldn't worry about putting gasoline in the car or, oiling the hinges on the gate or what to feed the dog who's going to bark when the bad guys come. It would be like, that's all Balaram, that's all Sankarshan, that's in the division of Govinda Maharaj, something like that. So he was free, but that's a wonderful place to be if you can, nice work if you can get it, as Frank Sinatra said. Nice work if you can get it. But this dichotomy between the institution and the saints, it's a fascinating problem. I was telling my wife before I fired up the computer this morning that a good example of this is seen in the Catholic Church in St. Joan of Arc. My stepfather was French, and he fought with the Free French against the Nazis. He was with the Maquisards in the Second World War, and they used the Cross of Lorraine, which I believe was promoted by Joan of Arc. She was a big deal for him. One of his ancestors was Gilles de Rais, who was the original Bluebeard. Interesting story. Who was the big general in the army of Joan of Arc. So when I was a kid, I used to read about Joan of Arc. I thought this is an interesting story. And it turns out, she was condemned as a witch and a heretic and burned at the stake by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, put faggots of wood, and poured oil on them and burned her alive as a witch. Right. But then years later, of course, in the 20th century, she was rehabilitated. And they said, oh, no, well, we didn't really mean to condemn her as a heretic or anything. In fact, what she did was great. She promoted France and God and Jesus Christ, and actually she's a saint. And they made her Saint Joan of Arc. So she went from being a devil to being a saint. Now, that's exactly the same institution, isn't it? Right? It was the Catholic Church that burned her, and it was the Catholic Church that made her a saint. So I was telling my wife, I guess that speaks for the flexibility of an institution, and that accounts for their longevity as well, that they can incorporate at one point condemn something and then later on incorporate it back in and revise the dogma and the doctrine, right? That demonstrates flexibility. But it also points out the dichotomy between being a mystic saint like Saint Francis, who was also at one point ostracized, and then later, established his own order, the Franciscans, after which you were named, Francis Mahoney. In Sanskrit, Francis is Pranashish. But I don't know. I think the point is we're all grappling with how do you become Krishna conscious outside the organization? How do you remain Krishna conscious as a human being walking in this brutal material world in the 21st century, surrounded by goblins and ghosts and demons and ghouls and all different kinds of artificial intelligence technology? How do we maintain our sanity as devotees? So, in a sense, the best way to cope with that is by becoming a mystic. It's very difficult to adhere absolutely to all the rules and regulations of an institution if you're not living inside that institution. So, how do we devote ourselves to a true form of Krishna conscious mysticism? Well, in the 1960s, Srila Prabhupada came along and he said, it's very easy. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. I talk too fast. I'm sorry. I should learn to slow down, I can just go, so we must become conscious. Conscious is important. But what is consciousness if there's no fulfillment? Ecstasy is the food of the soul. But I'm sorry, I get a little frenetic. All right.
Tapananandini has a hand raised. Tapananandini.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not controlling the board here. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Mahayogi, I think that the main problem with institutions is that people read something and then they think they have that kind of realization. And then they start behaving themselves and point their fingers to others because they think they have that kind of realization, like their teachers, like the pure devotee. So they regurgitate. I don't know how you say that in English.
What?
What has been here from the teachers and to regurgitan.
I don't
Regurgitate. I don't know. Regurgitar.
know. Oh.
They
Yeah. Sure. Resuscitate.
No. When you something of your stomach come back to your mouth.
Regurgitate. Regurgitate. Vomit.
Regurgitate. Yes. Yes, regurgitate because they don't have the kind of realization. Imagine that what was Jesus Christ defending the sinner woman for not being stoned to death. Imagine how he considered that Juana de Arco was killed the way you just mentioned. You know,
Yes,
they
what
are
would Jesus Christ say?
representing
Yes, good point.
they are representing Jesus Christ, but they are not understanding Jesus Christ. They don't have the authority, moral authority to talk into his name, but because they have read the Bible, they think they can do it. So this is the problem with the institutions, that they think they can do whatever it's out of their minds, because I cannot say out of love, because there is not love, and they can destroy others, they can judge others, that is not our religion. Our religion is to find faults in ourselves.
Yeah, this is very, very difficult. So it gets back to what I was trying to say about institutions versus personal realization. So for me, the best I can do is try to, as you say, rectify myself. It's interesting. I read a lot on the subject because this pertains to educational institutions as well, and models of pedagogy. So there's a very famous Brazilian pedagogue named Paulo Freire, and he points out that a lot of modern institutional education follows what he called the banking model, of education, where the teacher comes along and he's opens a banking account for you and then fills that account with whatever the subject material is. And then you make withdrawals when it's time to have an exam. Or, for example, we fill you with some knowledge and then you vomit that. And we look at the vomit to see, oh, okay, is that what I said? Does it match what I told you? And that's our education. But doesn't really work in spiritual matters, that I hear something from the master and I repeat it to you. It's all right. But when Vyasadeva got together with Ganesh to create the Mahabharata, Ganesh said, well, I will write this down as long as you don't stop dictating. And then Vyasadeva realized, well, he's superhuman. Ganesh can write this so fast, I won't be able to keep up with him. So he made a condition. And he said, well, I accept your condition, but you cannot write anything unless you understand it. First, you have to think about it, contemplate it, understand it, and then you can write it. And Ganesh agreed. So Ganesh would only write something down after he'd understood it. And that gave Vyas a little bit of space to compose. So it's all right to repeat what we hear just as it was spoken to us. That's a very nice value. Or to, repeat. But it's also important to try to realize what we've been taught. So in San Jose, California in 1984, 85, we created this book, The Loving Search for the Lost Servant. But I've been thinking about these things ever since then, 1987. So it's practically 40 years ago. But I've been thinking about all these things ever since then, trying to understand and realize what is Srila Sri Ramakrishna really saying. And I'm not any more qualified than anyone here to speak to those things, other than that I was part of the team that collected that in 1986 or 85 and published it in 87. And I've been trying to contemplate these things ever since. But for me personally, right now, I feel like this kind of Sangha is more useful to me than to sit in a temple and watch somebody wave some incense and read from a book, because everyone in this Sangha is an adult who has thought about all these concepts again and again and is trying to practice them on some level. So you please forgive me if I don't do complete justice to everything that has been said there, but I'm trying to keep up with some of these ideas. And you can see Srila Sri Ramakrishna probably gave that lecture at the Bodha Library, 60, 70, 80 years ago, but it's still pretty fresh. And that's the beauty of the Manu Samhita. That's the beauty of the Bhagavatam, that these ideas are ancient, but they're still fresh. So I think I've done my duty for today. I completed my hour. I feel like doing this is like having a PhD doctoral thesis oral exam every week, It's a lot of pressure, but right? So wherever you are, send some blessings my way. So if I don't get any mercy from you, I can't keep doing this. I'm getting old and I'm tired. And so send me some of your blessings. Think about me during the week. And yeah.
You are the best, Mahayogi. You know it. I always tell you.
Well, that's one who flatters me is my enemy, because I believe you, see, and it's not really true. I'm
For
not the
me,
best
it
enemy.
is. For me, it is. I'm not your enemy. You are my dearest friend, Mahayogi.
And I have to say, I have a friend of mine, Pavitra Savan. I don't know what became of him. One day he called me on the phone and said, Mahayogi, I won the lottery. Yeah? Yeah, $640,000. I'm going to give you half. It's like, well, that's great. Why? Why would you give me half? He said, well, in the room, there was a room at the San Jose Temple where Bhakti Sudhir Goswami had his headquarters. And I would visit him in the mornings and say, okay, this is what Srila Sri Ramakrishna said. What does he mean? What is this thing from the Manu Samhita? Explain it to me. And he would say something, and I'd go, yeah, but what about that? And he'd say, that's an interesting point. We'd think about it and talk about it and discuss. And this friend of mine, Pavitra Savan, his job was Mandira Marjanado. He used to clean the temple. So he would be hiding in the bathroom next door, listening to our talk. And he said, yeah, I won the lottery. I'm going to send you half, because when I was cleaning the bathroom next door, the things that you would discuss with Goswami Maharaj blew my mind. And, I just want to say, creating these literatures or working on them or researching them, those are the happiest days of my life, just thinking about these things. So I hope that, mutually we can profit from this sort of katan and discussion. And if you're out there in internet land, push the little button to subscribe, tell everybody how much you love it, and send some blessings our way. Pray for my soul. Pray for the soul of Subhasini Meenakshi Sundaram. Pray for the soul of Teresa Lorette Mola Tapanandini. Pray for Hari Priya. Pray for Nasar over there in Ukraine. Pray for the soul of Pranashish. Keep us alive. All right. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol. And that's it for today. We'll see you all next week. Adios and goodbye. Peace and love.
The assembled devotees ki jai. Thank you.